Hey, I'm Randy, and you're watching The Cheap Audio Man. Here at The Cheap Audio Man, we talk about high-value, hi-fi, home theater, and headphone equipment. And today we're talking about 4 reasons why you should not, ever, spend a bunch of money on hi-fi when you're first starting out. And then 1 reason when it's okay to open up the credit card and charge it. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about 4 reasons why you shouldn't spend big on hi-fi when you're just starting out. The number 1 reason why you shouldn't spend big when you're getting your first setup, you don't even know if you like it. It's like golf. You can go out and spend $4,000 on a set of golf clubs and then go golfing, and then you get really upset, you're really frustrated, you're not very good at it, there's no way that you're probably ever going to get good at it, and then you just end up hitting trees with your golf club. Now, because you've broken all the golf clubs, you can't resell them. You can't even get like 50% of what you paid because they're all broken because you hit things with them because you're so frustrated. That could happen with hi-fi gear. Point being is, if you've never listened to hi-fi gear like purposefully, if you've never really sat down and listened to music, you've only listened to Bluetooth speakers or things like that, but you think, hey, maybe I want to dip my toe into the hi-fi game, then start out small. So then you aren't stuck with a whole bunch of stuff that you can't use and you can't resell if you're not inside the return policy. So when you're ready, buy stuff that you can totally afford. Don't stretch your budget at all in the beginning. If you're buying new, buy from places like Crutchfield. They have a 60-day return policy. They also have a very good staff of people that can help you kind of point you in the right direction. Or buy used. And buy used if you think you can recoup that money if you don't like it. Number 2, you don't know your preferences. You don't even know what you like, and that's fine. And even when you figure out a speaker, as far as a sound signature that you like, or an amp, or a DAC, or whatever it is, they may change. Because I never really particularly cared for a warmer speaker or one that was a little bit less emphasized on the top end, but I still own speakers that have that signature. I still like to enjoy different presentations of my favorite music. Kind of like I get to hear the music all over again. It's kind of like a remix. Free remix. Well, it's not free because you paid for the speakers or the specific setup. But spending a lot of money right away on something could get you something that you don't like simply because you don't like that style of presentation. Maybe too lively for you on the top end, maybe too boosted in the bass. Maybe you don't like messing around with the turntable. Whatever it is, spend a little time in the hobby, get to know what you like personally, and then get involved with the community. Start asking questions. That can be done through my Patreon community. It can be done through any community. My advice with audio communities is look for ones that are pretty positive. If there's folks dismissing other people's questions or opinions, probably want to look elsewhere. Don't let that negativity infect such a wonderful hobby. You gotta kind of figure out what you like. And that is not always a fast process. Sometimes it takes a long time. That's why spending a bunch of money on a speaker that maybe a couple of reviewers like isn't a great idea, because you may not like that certain sound signature. And speakers and amps and DACs definitely have a flavor to them. Okay, you're into the hobby. You know you love it. You know you love music. You're spending a lot of time listening to it. Now, you want to get a turntable, or maybe you want to get a headphone rig. Don't go buy a $1,000 turntable or a $1,000 pair of headphones if you're not into that part of the hobby yet. Dip your toe into it, because you could hate listening to headphones. They can be too big. They may cause a rash. You may wear glasses. You may not get a good seal. You may just hate headphones. You may not like vinyl. If you go and buy a $1,000 turntable and you're like, and you never use it, then that's $1,000 wasted that you could have put towards something else. Maybe taking a vacation. It's tough to take a vacation on $1,000. I think it can be done though. Maybe in the Ozarks with a tent. But if you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, if you mainly listen to digital music and now you're thinking about getting into vinyl, don't spend big on a turntable, because you don't know if you're actually going to use it and get the most out of it. If you're just getting into headphones, don't spend a huge amount of money on headphones or a headphone amp or DAC. However, there are some safe bets within the headphone space. Usually that's Skit and just Shelly Labs. The Modi and Magni, the J2, E2, and Archel 2.5. You're going to get most of the money back if you want to sell them on the used market, especially in my community. So there's ways to be pretty safe, especially in the headphone realm. Turntables, I'd look at Fluence RT82 and up to get started. RT82 is a great turntable, about $300, and you can upgrade it along the way to make it like their flagship $500 model. Point being is you don't have to spend a ton of money to figure out if this is something that you really want to lean into. And then if you really want to lean into it, a lot of times there's an upgrade path with the stuff if you bought it smart. If you got the right stuff, you can even upgrade it just from there. And you don't have to go out and buy something new. Before you go jumping feet first into the vinyl pool, make sure you like vinyl. Number 4, technology changes quickly, especially with home theater, especially with HDMI. Woo, HDMI stuff is fun. It's frustrating, super frustrating. It seems like HDMI stuff never works. Or it works intermittently, whenever it wants. Here's the thing. Once my home theater receiver, which is a Marantz NR1711, I have an Apple 4K TV hooked up to that, and then it goes into a Hisense TV. Once it finds a way and it starts working, then it stays working. But as soon as I unplug speaker cables or anything else and I put something else in there, if I'm testing something else, it goes crazy. It doesn't work. And then every once in a while, the receiver just goes into manual setup in the middle of SpongeBob as my kids are watching. And they love that. They love it. They love it when their entertainment cartoon is interrupted by a Marantz setup menu. Big fans of it. I'm also a big fan of that because at that point I'm pretty tired and then I have to go fix the receiver because a ghost apparently wants to run Odyssey. Point being, if you buy a receiver, let's say you spend $5,000 on a receiver, you don't know if you really love home theater or if you're going to use it, and then all of a sudden the HDMI stuff changes, you're probably still going to be able to figure out a way to use that receiver. But if you're spending huge amounts of money on stuff that has changing tech, you could be out some of that money. That includes stuff with probably streamers and DACs built in are the two things that I see the, biggest risk on. I know there's a lot of companies that are kind of leaning into streaming speakers, streaming integrated amps, have built-in DACs. I think that's great. I think they're super convenient, but I think as customers, we have to consider what's going to happen when the latest and greatest thing comes out. Is my new product that I just spent $3,000 on a streaming amplifier, is that going to be obsolete? And I think the answer to that is sometimes yes. There are some companies that are making modular designed amplifiers. For me personally, I want the amplifier to kind of be separate, kind of have its own separate thing, because chances are the amplifier is going to be able to be used for 10, 20, 30 years if it's a decent amplifier. The stuff that makes me nervous are the streaming part, because usually that has some brains in it, processors, things like that. And the DAC part, again, it has processors, brains in it, and then it has DAC chips and things like that. Some of these streaming amplifiers also have HDMI connections. We just talked about how quickly HDMI can change. If you're just getting into this, make sure that you know if you're going to put big money out on something that you think you're going to be able to use it for 3 or 4 years, or even if some of the equipment becomes obsolete, as in HDMI or streaming or the DAC portion, that you have some options to optical out or RCA into it or different things like that. So even if part of it becomes obsolete, you can still use the amplifier section, things like that. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. We have over 500 videos on everything from turntables, DACs, amps, headphones, headphone amps. Turn on the bell notifications because I do post up a lot of sales when things are about as low as I've seen them. Also, give this video a like. You can always take your like back. So many reasons not to spend big on hi-fi. When should you spend big? You should spend big. Okay. Here's a good example Jeez, I about knocked over my coffee. Here's a great example of buy once, cry once. This is my leather briefcase. When I used to have a real job, I used it every day. I bought that in 2006. I think I spent $600 or $700 on that in 2006. However, it's made from actual, real, full grain leather. When you see a leather chair and it's flaking off, that's either a bonded leather or maybe it's only top grain leather. But if it's a full grain leather, then it lasts forever. Forever. And so this is full grain leather. The reason I spent $600 or $700 on that 16 years ago is because, one, it had a crazy warranty. 100 years, no questions asked on getting it fixed. Number two, I knew it was going to be very, 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 very durable. And number three, I knew I was going to use it a lot. And that's the whole point of this. I used and continue to use that briefcase every day. Well, not as much every day now, but I still carry camera gear in it and stuff like that. I knew in the long run, the value proposition for that $600 or $700 briefcase was very high for me because I was going to use it all the time. If you know you're a vinyl lunatic, maniac, and you love vinyl, then go spend $800 on a cartridge or $1,500, $2,000 on a turntable. But only if you know you're going to use it all the time, because otherwise you're just going to have a really expensive paperweight. If you're really into digital music starting out and you know you love digital music, you got a great streamer, you love that streamer, yeah, spend $500 or $600 on a DAC or $1,000 on a DAC. Here's a great idea. DACs, if it's an R2R, it's kind of future-proof because it doesn't have a Delta Sigma chip in it. It doesn't have a processor in it. So if you're really into digital music, you've read some reviews, you've heard anecdotal experience from people in the community about an R2R DAC, that is a great investment because that technology is not changing. It's always going to be what it is. So there are times to really spend money, but only when you know yourself, you know what you like, and you know what you're going to spend the most time on. Now, you can spend your money on whatever you want. You can buy whatever you want, sell it, resell it, because part of our proclivities is that we like to buy and research gear, and that's fine. But if you want to, I think, be smart about it and not waste money, I think you should maybe take a look at these ideas, suggestions. If you're getting started in this hobby, I did a video comparing a $130 integrated amp with a DAC to a $900 integrated amp with a DAC. And I'll link that right here. It's something you should check out because it kind of goes to show you that you don't need to spend a ton of money to get enjoyment out of this hobby. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen and fill yourself with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.